Okay, that's a question from Sebastian from Telegram chat. Would any of you be able to provide an example of a situation or transaction that meets all the other conditions of reciprocity, being fully informed, voluntary transfer, warranted, and free from imposition of cost by externalities, but fails specifically on the productive condition? I think a concrete example would really help me deepen my understanding of this aspect of reciprocity. And we actually discussed this with Eric yesterday. And the only example I could think of is enabling an addict who already has full understanding of causes and effects of this addiction and still chooses to engage in it. Such exchange is clearly voluntary and isn't uninformed. Whether it's warranted depends on what outcomes we decide must be warranted against.
Right. I mean, it's the whole, I mean, I want to try to go from hot merchandise to blackmail, if that's okay, if I can continue that, because that example's pretty good. Right. So what you just said is you're reinforcing a hazard. Right. Yeah. Right. That's not only not productive, it's because you actually get worse by using the drugs. Right.
Yeah, but based on an assumption that he knows it's gonna get worse and still chooses to do it.
It's like the people who, it's like why we can't solve the methodology for depressive suicide is because there's a category of people who they don't want to be fixed. Right. It's the people who hit the bottom and want to be fixed that you can fix. So no method works because it's not actually, it's that the person, it's that every method thinks because they rescue some percentage of the people, it's their method. It's not. It's just that those people are rescuable and the other people are not. All right. So ask the question again so I can get my head around this.
Is there any example of exchange that is reciprocal by all conditions except being productive?
Okay. So let's say that I've got a stolen watch. I don't know how God knows how I got this, right? Right. Doesn't matter. I didn't steal it, right? But I'm exchanging a good, right? Now it's beneficial to me. It's beneficial to the guy who's buying it from me, but it's still not productive. In other words, the end result isn't productive. So this is a question of when you say, is it productive? It's not productive because of an externality, right? Now we go to blackmail, where blackmail is the canonical example, which is, well, I'm doing this voluntarily, but I'm only doing it because it's coercive. In other words, I'm worse off if I don't do it. Whereas what I want is to be able to do a thing and be better off. So I'm not better off by paying somebody, decreasing my assets in order to pay them not to do me harm. And it's the same thing with protection rackets. You know, a protection racket is telling you I'm going to protect you. What they mean is I'm going to harm you if you don't pay me not to harm you. Right. So this is the spectrum of examples.
But the question is it really voluntary? Is that if there's a threat of imposition?
Well, no, but that's the problem with stating reciprocity as positives. And you and I, Martin, have been over this in one flavor or another, couple of hundred times probably, which is that it's voluntary if it's not coercive. Right? It's productive if it's not unproductive. It's free of externality if there aren't any externalities.
Yeah, right. I think of threat of imposition as coercion. So blackmail is coercive.
Yes, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. So when what we're talking about is all of these things are coercive. They're coercing somebody and they may be an internal coercion, right, which is direct, or an external coercion, right, which is indirect. But there's still some coercion going on or some trade that's affecting somebody negatively. it's just a decrease in, I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble because I actually have a hard time understanding objections to this, right? And I'd love to be able to solve it. It's
Well,
what I'm really saying is it's non-coercive,
the
right?
question is asking about an exchange that isn't coercive but is unproductive.
So here's an unproductive one, right? The problem is finding one. It's actually really hard. So here's the deal. I really don't want to give my neighbor my lawnmower to mow his lawn. Right? Right. But I get a better environment if he mows his effing lawn. Right? It's not coercive, it's for my benefit. But is it productive? It's not productive, it's just loss prevention. It's defensive. So you work with variables like that. The problem is when you start saying what's unproductive, it's like, okay, here, let's talk. I'm going to try to make it more complex, and I'll see if I lose everybody with this one. What does marginalism mean? Well, the reason marginalism defeated the labor theory of value is that if I have sacks of flour, I'm a millwright or something, or a farmer with a mill, and I have 50 sacks of flour, and I only need 3 of these sacks to make it through the winter. The first sack I sell, right, is no marginal difference to me. So the price is the primary factor. When I sell the 25th bag and it's partway through the season, now I have to value this differently. I'm thinking, well, am I going to have some to sell for the rest of the season? Should I raise the price? So now it becomes a future prediction problem. Now I'm down to, I need 3 bags, right, to make it through the winter myself. Now I'm bagged to the 5th bag. Now I'm beginning to export a risk and talk to myself. So what marginalism means is each incremental change is a different value proposition. All right, so, okay. I got really excited with not making myself run down the rat hole with that one. So, and I almost lost the thread. So, well,
sorry, go ahead, finish. We have a related question on the YouTube chat.
All right, let me finish this, I think. So the question again, Martin, was what is unproductive? So the problem is, what is unproductive? If I come up with something that's unproductive, it's like it's the problem of rational choice. Given the step hierarchy of marginal value, where does it become an irrational choice for me? Right, it's highly contingent. And realistically, it's still a rational choice to give my mower to lend my lawnmower to the neighbor because it improves my quality of life. So there's what we get is there's neutral exchanges. Like, for example, you want some gloves, I need some chickens. It's an even trade. I'm not necessarily better off, but I'm not worse off because I have lots of chickens, like I had lots of flour, right? But if I don't have many chickens, right, then it starts to become a cost I can't bear. So this is why you say, well, it just has to be non-coercive, and it has to, and the way we say it is it has to be productive. But I mean, a very different switch, right? Giving you gloves for chickens. I don't know. That's the old example. I'm trying to figure out. I got that from Mises. Giving you a pair of leather gloves for some chickens, right, is a fair trade to me. But is it productive? Not really. It's just a swap, but it's not unproductive. So this is why I say stating reciprocity in the positive, which is the moral frame, is different from stating irreciprocity in the negative, which is the criminal frame. And so when I say things like, why do we say it is, productive, fully informed, warranted, voluntary transfer of demonstrated interest. We might as well just flip it around and say, well, the prohibition on of unproductive, asymmetrically informed, involuntary coercion of transfer of demonstrated interests that produce externality. With the produce any externality, we can say it either in the via negativa or the via positiva, but and maybe it's a mistake for us to continue talking about what it means to do the moral thing if it's imprecise, and we should be stating it in the negativa. And maybe what we should do is, when we're talking about reciprocity, show them both so we have the clarity.
I like that.
So Zach on YouTube asked, how do you differentiate between coercion by threatening to subvert versus someone saying mean things and it hurts their feelings?
I don't know why feelings matter. I know that they matter to some people, but I'd need an example, because there are times when you're correcting. What's so?
It's like, it's because it's like, I don't know why feelings matter, because they don't. I think any.
Aren't
Okay.
feelings sort of deciding what matters at all?
Well, wait a minute. No, I just now I'm screwed. Okay, I'm going to try it again. God damn it. So let's take this and say, okay, it depends on why your feelings are being altered. Are you being told a corrective measure? Are you being told to be moral and reciprocal? Are you all right? If your feelings are offended, good, they should be. If your feelings are that I don't want to cooperate with you, good, you should understand why I don't want to cooperate you, so that you modify your behavior so that I cooperate with you in the future. If I'm offending your feelings to take advantage of you, then of course I'm engaging in a deceit. I'm trying to manipulate you. So the problem is, this relativism that's been practiced with feelings is essentially that. It's an attempt to reinforce relativism by saying feelings are legitimate, rather than truth and fiction, or falsehood, or reciprocity or irreciprocity, because you are giving a corrective measure or a coercive measure. Is that, yeah, I'm getting faces look like you don't understand, and I don't know how to make.
I think you're just saying that's like that shift is to evade the responsibility of being given corrective measures based on your feelings. And you're
Correct.
saying, well, I don't like how it feels when you're giving me correction, so I'm going to try to create this whole new thing where then I can just push back and evade the responsibility of how it feels to be told, you don't want to cooperate with me.
Because the problem with people who feel is that I'm going to really bury myself with this one. I really am. Language convinces us, because language is a protocol that allows us to communicate across all people in a population, right? It convinces us that all people think in a population. Whereas the more emotional you are, the less thinking you're doing, the more responses you're doing. And what are those responses telling? They're irresponsible people. I don't want to adapt. Why? Because I want to depend on feelings. Why? Because I don't want to do the work of self-moderation. Why? Because that would require agency. Why? Because agency requires responsibility. Why? Because I want to avoid responsibility, right? They want to be children. So whenever you tell me feelings are offended, I mean, it's like, I offend people all the time by accident, because, I'm a nerd, right? And so the only regrets I have in life are when I've accidentally offended someone because I'm fucking clueless, right? I mean, all my guilty pangs are like, wow, I really hurt that person, and I just thought I was telling the truth, or I didn't understand, right? So in the end, we're not willing to tell people who are worried about their feelings that they're just children. evading responsibility. Whereas if I've hurt your feelings and I'm betraying reciprocity, that's an indicator I've betrayed reciprocity. Whereas when the feminine mind says it, you've betrayed the parent-child relationship. Does that sink in? That's what's happening. When
trying to say something for a while now.
It's fine. I was just going to add that lots of people, when they speak, they are never actually communicating any kind of argument or rational information. They're just stating the negotiation position, and that negotiation position can be informed by their own lacking or accurate self-perception or self-understanding of their own abilities. So people who do not have the ability to even estimate their own abilities, they continuously make errors in judging whether other people can cooperate with them or whether they can cooperate with the people. And so they just externalize their own understanding, lacking understanding, and hope that you will forbear their errors, or they just demand. This is the problem of the left authoritarian disposition, because they have low verbal ability. They continuously assume that they are moral and that other people are not, and they get to demand what other people have to conform to in order to cooperate with them. And so generally speaking, it's then upon you, the one who is coming into contact with that, to evaluate whether these people are forbearable, whether they are able to be cooperated with at all. And if they are, what level of, let's say, your forbearance does it require for you to make it possible for them to cooperate? And oftentimes these people are mostly demonstrating a lack of guidance and leadership in their own life, or social feedback that they don't have, which puts them in
agency, and therefore they can't take responsibility.
Right. They're in the unfortunate position of not having any instruction or social feedback that they can trust. And so it's not necessarily an indictment of them and of their ill will, but of their unfortunate isolation that is primarily a consequence of the overall civilizational degeneration that comes as a consequence of us.
Right. So you're being nice. I love that you're being nice. Right. So I'm saying it as if there's no choice for these people. You're saying that these people have a choice if they're educated.
No.
No. Hold on. Let me finish with my joke. And Martin says they're irredeemable no matter what we do. So now that I've got my joke out, you can correct me.
I'm just putting the attention on, if you care, here is what you can do. If you don't care, that's fine. But if you care that these people experience something else, or that you want to create normative or cultural capital, then this is what you can do. And I am attempting to show that it's not always due to an ill will or maliciousness or complete inability, but actually just environmental constraints that put these people in a position where they can't actually develop agency in the first place. They miss developmental windows, and they don't have the forbearance of other people around them to help them error correct.
So the way I state this is the feminine capture of education academy, media, and state, and now entertainment, has led to the infantilization of generations by inhibiting them from learning adversarial competition and the resolution of differences across people who are different. It may be that there's a large contingent of the female population and a small contingent of the male population that are in fact incapable of adult thought. I mean, there's certainly quite a few people
self-directed adulthood.
Right. There certainly are people who are in it's kind of just, as a logician, I find this terrifying, how quickly logical reasoning declines. I mean, it's far, like, it's one thing to say, to put some 70 IQ girl on trial and in a public forum and see what a 70 IQ person thinks like. But that's just the extreme example. I mean, people's ability to logically reason under 105 decreases really rapidly.
I would answer the question a little bit more simply, I think, which is that using the metric of feelings to solve the question is inappropriate. It's whether or not the person is that caused the hurt feelings is behaving in an irreciprocal fashion is the only metric that's valuable.
Correct.
And that tells us whether or not that was justifiable or an error on the receiver's part or an error on the transmitter's part. And that's all that we're talking about here.
Thank you.
I'll
You just said that first, and I wouldn't have had to go through a 15-minute
I
dissertation.
had to wait. It was not my turn yet.
I'll still bend the question somewhat that feelings do matter and well, truth matters more. But when we're correcting someone, we don't need to insult him on top of it until we have an evidence that we need to insult him for it to work.
Correct.
Yeah, I
We
guess
just basic manners.
I mean, we're pretty good at that, right? We try to avoid, in our system, we're pretty careful about avoiding GSRM, right? We avoid, I mean, some of the things we say are just true. Like that's just immaturity or inexperience or whatever. But that's not an insult like you're a bad person. It means you simply haven't, it's like saying you're not educated or informed or experienced. But we try to avoid GSRM all the time, unless, I'm playing, I know I do it to play with people who are doing the opposite to me, right? To mirror it back at them. But we don't do that at all in our organization.
Generally speaking, we state a constructive position. And
Yeah.
if people attack the position, we're happy to defend it. People who don't, who are motivated differently, who attempt to manipulate rather than persuade, they don't state a constructive position, they make a complaint, and they use the complaint to affect themselves gaining in power over other people by rallying people. And so I think the subversion and the feeling differentiation comes in when you're actually making a specific critiquable suggestion or proposition. People who attempt to just gain power to themselves without that don't do that.
I want to close with, so the way I generally approach this, if I have to, is I say, well, let's just work through the logic of this. It's like Marx's presumption of society. Okay, why don't you commit suicide? What's the YouTube politically correct way of saying that? Is self-termination or something like that, or
Self-deletion.
Self-deletion.
Self-termination by self.
Look at Brad. Look at Brad's face. He's like, you said the words out loud.
The quiet part. Oh my.
So, but but this is it's not me. This is what's his name? French author of the plague. Camus. This is Albert Camus. He says, why don't we commit suicide? Answer that question. That's the foundation of all philosophy. All I've done is add to that and said, why don't I kill you and take your stuff? That's the question of ethics. And the next question is, why don't me and mine kill you and yours? And that's the question of politics, right? And there's two more layers. I won't go into them because they get abstract. But the point being that, I mean, there's the truth is that these are like libertarians want to consider property a given, and I'm like, no, it's a construction. Well, it's the same thing for cooperation. It's utilitarian. I always have the option, right, to defect, right? And so the same thing with politics. So the idea that we are somehow artificially bound to each other like families are is just an infantile understanding of the world we live in. It's infantile. It's wishful. And yes, in Christianity, it's essentially the goal is to say treat everyone as if they're their kid, right? But that doesn't involve treating everyone tolerating everyone as if they're children. It means what the other part of the Christian ethic is: you have to be responsible for yourself and others and avoiding harms, right? And especially Christianity is proactive. Not only have to do harms, but you have to do costly goods, things that actually cost you to help other people be better, because that's the only solution to the innovator's dilemma, just as altruistic punishment is the only solution to maintaining conformity.
I'd just add finally that there's another question of behavioral economics that simply comes into play for people who do not have the capacity to reason or actually logically ascertain things, and they have to rely on their feelings as the primary feedback mechanism for them to adapt. And so they are either listening to their own feelings or to the social feedback from around them for instruction. And so you can do that too as a logical and rational person. I don't rely on my reason at all times in all situations. I rely on my feelings because I know that they're well trained and they're actually instructed by my own capacity to judge things. And therefore, every time I demonstrate to myself that my judgment is sound, I no longer need to actually exercise it in every instance because my intuition tells me this is the outcome that I will get to.
Correct. So what you're saying is investing in self-regulation of your emotions produces emotional responses that no longer require the effort of self-regulation. So it's an investment in future returns.
Yes, and the vast majority of people cannot actually invest in their own self-regulation. That is a forbearance that we have to do for them.
We have to provide the training necessary for people to do that. This is the old argument between Stoicism and Christianity, is that Christianity is really accessible for even for women and children. I didn't get any reaction out of that. I set that up just on purpose. Whereas Stoicism requires you to be in an environment where you use pretty disciplined training and self-awareness to pursue a specific goal. So my argument with education or modernity is that you're a special flower or snowflake or whatever it is actually the worst possible outcome, because you're guaranteeing everyone pursues whatever animal instincts they have. And then you have to use some rather ridiculous form of falsehood to constrain them. Whereas if we just taught people physical fitness and emotional self-regulation, the way the church basically did on one hand and agrarian labor did on the other, and the necessity of preparing yourself for military service did in the last, then we would have people who are agentic. But the problem is our education system is predicated on the fact that those past forms of indoctrination into self-regulation, responsibility is actually the term, are archaic and oppressive, when in fact the fact that people consider them archaic and oppressive is evidence that we were right.